But so I Survived a Zombie Apocalypse is an 8-part UK reality television game show that aired on BBC Three in 2015. Taking place in the abandoned Monroe shopping village in rural Scotland, which is obviously a reference to the Monroe shopping mall in Dawn of the Dead. The show is set 6 months after a zombie outbreak caused by 5G Wi-Fi throughout the United Kingdom. 12 survivors gather in the shopping village and must stay alive for 7 days before they can be rescued by the army and taken to a zombie-free island. So in reality, they win a holiday. And usually for a game show, there is the possibility that all of the survivors can win. The only way you can lose the game is if you get caught and eaten by a zombie. You can't be voted off or anything like that. It also has a very unusual tone for a game show. It's presented as completely factual while utilizing common tropes found in zombie narratives to create dramatic situations and missions. Every episode opens with an introductory montage featuring real newsreaders, and much of the recording of the show is filtered through CCTV and surveillance drones. The environment's very deliberately kept uncomfortable. It's very cold, there are limited and very basic supplies, loads of insects, there aren't enough beds or blankets, there are these electrical storms that disrupt power, the roof leaks, and water has to be collected every day, either from rainfall or for a pipe in the middle of zombie territory. So nothing is guaranteed in this. The possible practicalities of living through a zombie apocalypse are taken extremely seriously, including brutal and bloody scenes whenever a survivor is killed. So the production team had a death squad, as they were called, on standby. So whenever a contestant was caught by a zombie, they take them to one side, calm them down, and then throw a load of blood on them and then send them back and film a death scene, which sounds so much fun. So bearing in mind we're talking about a game show, a lot of research went into establishing the mythology of the virus. The infection comes from exposure to the 5G network, primarily through mobile phones. So this was 10 years ago. So this was around the time that the 4G network was being very controversial and people were worried that it would cause cancers and headaches and brain damage. So this exposure mutates common bacteria found in the eye known as Staphylococcus aureus, possibly, if I can pronounce things correctly. So bacteria finally destroys the parts of the brain controlling aggression, hunger, and emotion and motor functions. So in contrast, it also features tongue-in-cheek or black humour, mostly in the form of comic relief public service announcements from the Preventative Agency for Neurological Transformations and Zombifications. These are used to give survival tactics and explain certain facets of the apocalypse through instruction booklet-style drawings and very upbeat advice. Quite frankly, it's very upbeat. You know, friends and family may be dead, or even worse, flesh-eating zombies. Try and focus on the positives. You're still alive, and there's a very small chance you could survive. There's also a live presenter who addresses the audience directly and acts as another survivor with his own little mini storyline. He apparently has omniscient knowledge of the events taking part within the main group, despite never actually interacting with them, acting as both guide to the audience and an active participant to the events on screen. So it's a very strange format. The survivors also receive assistance from the army, who offer instructions over radio on how to fortify their base, make repairs, and scavenge equipment and rations. Producer Sebastian Grants notes that many of the tasks deliberately include tropes and ideas influenced by text. So Dawn of the Dead, 28 Days Later, In the Flesh, Resident Evil, The Last of Us, and of course, The Walking Dead. As the days continue, more complications arise within the base that follow the traditional beats of a zombie narrative, including environmental damage, camouflaging themselves in guts and viscera, the arrival of an already infected survivor that they then have to deal with, and an extra strong super boss zombie called Abomination. I also apologise for the quality of screenshots. There are not many available. Examining parallels between survivor behaviour on fictional post-apocalyptic narratives and the supposed reality of I Survived a Zombie Apocalypse suggests that under the pressures of an environment that challenges social discourses, there's a shift in the concepts of power and othering. The apocalypse forces traditional parameters of othering in a social environment to alter in a way that offers marginalised people more of a place in a community. So because they're facing a bigger other, the boundaries get redrawn. Instead of a focus on social or identity markers that indicate differences, such as gender, age, class, race, disability, so on, suspicions of the other are almost exclusively transferred to people new to the group. even within the context of reality television, which, we all know is not real. Um, the show demonstrates these new formations. As Annette Hill argues, whereas actors performing real people invite audiences to think about how fact might become fiction, reality television asks audience to reflect on how fiction might become fact. So, of course, this is reality television, so there are issues of authenticity. Added to that, this is a fantastical premise, and the fact that the producers couldn't really kill the contestants, we hope. Reality television already has an established dissonance with the truth. Critics such as Hill and Mark Andreevich, for example, note that viewers and critics alike acknowledge the contrived reality of reality television. Andreevich, sorry about mispronouncing before, explains that viewers search for moments of authenticity while understanding that they are watching something edited and artificial. And this is something Richard Kilbourne calls duality plus, an acknowledgement that reality has been dramatically enhanced for entertainment in order to stage the real through contrived situations and formulaic tropes. And Zombie Apocalypse exacerbates this uneasy dynamic with reality by applying a clearly fictional apocalypse setup filtered through a highly recognizable zombie discourse. It's a reality show set in a fantasy world designed using familiar but fictional archetypes, settings, and narrative beats. The addition of a framing narrative with the presenter and public service announcements are stark reminders that the viewer is watching a television programme, yet they assist in the in-world building. The use of CCTV, overhead shots, jump scare scene transitions, and animated maps add to a sense of artificiality, while continual distortions of the feed from damaged footage give the show a found footage horror movie feel. There were 13 participants in I Survived a Zombie Apocalypse, including one who was purely introduced to play the role of a survivor who's unknowingly infected with the virus. It's actually unclear whether that she was an actress or a public participant who was sort of assigned this role. The stable of participants was unusual for British reality television at the time. BBC Three was considered a quote-unquote young person's channel aimed at 16 to 34-year-olds, and while reality television had long included people from different races, sexualities, and economic backgrounds, the vast majority were young, working-class, white, and able-bodied, while any LGBTQ plus participants were usually clearly coded as such through stereotyping and performative edits. Zombie Apocalypse, on the other hand, features participants from other underrepresented communities, including 2 disabled contestants, an older, although not old, contestant, and a transgender contestant. Although clearly in the minority, a minimum 4 of the survivors were people of colour and another was born outside the UK. 10 were under 30, with 8 of those under 25, including 3 18-year-olds. The remaining survivors, 2 were in their 30s, and the remaining one was a 56-year-old grandmother called Jackie, and I will talk about her later. The series therefore showed other bodies, whether through impairment, age, or gender, in this exceptionally unusual reality television environment. Producer Sebastian Grant notes that the show wasn't cast like a usual reality show. We tried to take elements from a cast that might appear in a typical zombie drama. Survivors introduce themselves with sound bites that succinctly sum up the way they will be presented for the rest of the show. A lot of the time, these do not give the best first impression. So we have, I'm going to survive the zombie apocalypse because I'm totally awesome. I think a bloke should be a bloke. Even if the world is coming to an end, I will still have my makeup on. Priorities. I'm not an aggressive person. I just enjoy fighting. And the classic, I'm a leader that follows, which is quickly followed up with, I'd definitely throw myself in front of a zombie if it was for a fit bird. And for anyone who isn't familiar, fit bird is UK slang for beautiful woman. So Hill writes that reality television excels at connecting audiences with other people, offering audiences a chance to see people other than themselves. Many subgenres of reality television pride themselves on promoting the experiences of ordinary people, though often in extraordinary situations. I don't know if this is Carpenter or Carpentier, but I'm assuming Carpenter. Nico Carpenter notes that reality television can be used to validate ordinary people by making them visible. However, that term ordinary people is problematic in itself, with critics such as Carpenter and Roger Bromley arguing that this is used to refer to lower classes and the non-elite. But as we all know, zombies are exemplary examples of the monstrous other in themselves, but they also provide the framework for examining otherness in society by exposing and resisting corruption within hierarchies of power and control. Zombie texts frequently focus on the dynamics of disparate survivors who have been thrown together, particularly those set sometime after the initial outbreak, where groups and families have been broken apart and forced to form new communities. So, Walking Dead, Dead Nation, Last of Us, those kind of texts. The bonds between people become essential for survival, particularly in the early days of the apocalypse. Strangers and even enemies must work together against the far bigger threat of the zombie. Therefore, othering undergoes a new dynamic, where once a new community has been established, survivors simply search for similarities between them rather than differences. As the proverb goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. There's a moment, a sort of moment of this in the very first episode of Zombie Apocalypse. One of the survivors called Tom goes up to Jonas, who is from Cambridge but born in Lithuania, and immediately asks him where he's from. Cambridge, Jonas replies, but you have an accent, Tom says, and he just gets told it's a Cambridge posh accent. And then another survivor comes in and says, "Oh no, I'm also from Cambridge." So some are actively looking for differences, and others are looking for similarities right from the get-go. In zombie apocalypse, topics such as race, class, sexuality, and country of birth are largely avoided, redirected, or not shown on screen. In contrast, disability and impairment are spoken about candidly. Nick tells the group about his experiences as a deaf person and how he communicates through lip reading, while Jonas talks openly about his artificial limb, explaining that he does not regret having the amputation and prefers using the prosthetic. He also uses humour to deal with questions about his prosthesis, including his blade leg, or anti-zombie leg, as he calls it. He pretends he was attacked by a shark when people inevitably ask what happened, and he warns someone who wants to touch the leg that it's a bit ticklish, so be careful. Differences here that could potentially lead to othering within the group are made less threatening through transparency and humour. Instead, othering becomes transmuted into tension surrounding survival. Lack of physical fitness is seen as a weakness which must be rooted out. The two survivors with impairments are both extremely capable physically. So Nick is a mixed martial artist, I believe, and Jonas is a personal trainer. Brent Walter Kine explains impairment is a physical reality, a lost arm, and non-functioning eyes. A disability is an impairment made disadvantageous due to the environment. Disability in these terms then becomes a socially constructed entity that both excludes those with impairments and prioritises those without. Nick and Jonas's impairments do not exclude them from events of the show, and Jonas's particular is considered to be an asset of the group rather than some, weak or a burden to the able-bodied survivors. The othering of impaired bodies undergoes a social transformation, so it might be that it would automatically be assumed to be a weakness. The focus shifts from whether the body is vulnerable or impaired to whether the body is useful. The disabled body is not the impaired one, but the unfit one, the older or unclean one. In the zombie world, it's what you can do that is important, not what you cannot. And The Walking Dead in particular uses this as the series goes on. There are a lot of disabled characters because of the nature of having a zombie apocalypse. And they are all very capable, which is wonderful. This transformation also manifests in other zombie texts, notably in post-apocalyptic narratives, where the likelihood of impaired bodies is far higher due to injury or the amputation of limbs. Sorry, I've just said that. Although impairments make survival more difficult, it's characters who are considered weak physically or emotional that become the disabled ones. In episode 3 of Zombie Attacks, very different show, Zombie Apocalypse, some of the survivors suggest it would be better for the group if the weak, notably Jackie and Sarah, died first, and a significant pressure is put on those those contestants to take part in order to try and kill them off. Whereas later on, it is the newcomers and those considered emotionally untrustworthy that are labelled as weak. Suggests that the psychology of the character that gives them the tools to survive, even over a healthy and intact body, as well as highlighting the importance of adaptability and fortitude in the undead world. This isn't exclusive to zombie texts, by the way. In other post-apocalypse texts with disabilities, it happens as well. So if you think of Reagan's cochlear implant from A Quiet Place and how that's used as a weapon, or how people deliberately impair their sight in Bird Box, But the undead carry a much greater risk of injury to survivors over time, underlining the distinction between impairment and disability in post-apocalyptic survival. Survivors of zombie apocalypse quickly develop an in-group, out-group instability, with the original participants actively led by Jackie, who's here, actively turning against the newer members, namely Nick and Jordan. There are various events that cause the survivors to turn on each other and power dynamics to change, and you have this divide between the original group and the newcomers. Suspicions against them had already formed after Natasha, another survivor, had come in. She was the one who was already infected, and they had to, run away from her. But the main threat for them appears to be just simply that they arrive later and that they're not considered to be fully part of the group. It's exacerbated when Jordan attends a mission with Jonas, a very popular Jonas, only for Jonas himself to die. The group, apart from Nick, immediately hold Jordan responsible, and he's absolutely condemned from then on. He has no chance. Jackie is introduced as an adventurous grandmother who quickly makes herself the mother of the group by cooking and cleaning. However, the events of episodes 5 and 6 show her using this role to her advantage to manipulate the other survivors. So, episode 6 introduces Abomination, this enormous superpowered zombie that the army had been experimenting on before he escaped, because that has never gone wrong for anyone in any zombie text ever. Anyway, throughout the episode, Jackie appears absolutely determined to send Jordan to his death, insisting on a third person joining a 2-person mission. And she says to him, if you do let us go, you're sending us both to our deaths. She leans very close to him. She goes, I know you want me to die, and I hope that you can live with yourself when you killed us. Compare that with later, where she's saying, give him the most dangerous missions, we want him to die. We don't want, he was here after us, we don't want him to win. So yeah, she ends up manipulating him to going into another mission. They don't normally do 2 back to back, but he is put in another one. They reiterate that it's every man for themselves, and it's harsh, but we want him, as in Jordan and Nick, to die. So again, there's absolutely no incentive for them to do this. They can all survive. They aren't going to lose anything by Jordan surviving. It's the in-group, out-group dynamic. It's not divided by who can contribute, by who arrived first. This is somewhat refuted in other fictional zombie texts, where although new additions to the group are understandably treated with suspicion, most are assimilated fairly quickly. This may be because they're given a chance to prove themselves, but there are very few examples where new survivors are adopted into a group purely to be sacrificed or manipulated with malice in this way. Notably, Jackie uses her position as the mother and the harmless older lady to express the power she has here. Not does she focus on her age and stamina compared to the younger survivors, but she puts on this facade of nicety and care while actively plotting Jordan's demise. Yeah, Jordan goes on another mission and he dies. He gets killed by Abomination. Everyone else tries to justify their actions, but it's very clear Nick is the next target. But unfortunately for Jackie, but in a moment of beautiful poetic justice, she's actually the next to die, because she runs into the freezer when they're trying to trap Abomination, and he gets locked in with her. She's amazing. Yeah. So as much as I enjoy stories about the undead, I don't want to experience it firsthand. And hopefully this show is the closest we'll come to seeing how real people function in a similar situation. Any authentic behaviour captured on camera must be viewed through the lens of reality television, where it's unknown exactly how much is performative. As such, the survivors become more like characters than people, and it's uncertain how much the audience sees as real. Hill writes that reality television is a mix of fact and fiction, helps to create individual and collective cultural experiences that people will pay for again and again. And Zombie Apocalypse supposedly offers the chance to see how real people will behave in an actual zombie apocalypse, or at least a fairly decent approximation of one. But authenticity becomes buried under layers of simulacra and discourse. Shows such as The Walking Dead thrive on the drama of characters who betray versus those who commit heroic and self-sacrificing acts. But in the world of reality television, altruistic behaviour can't be trusted. They know that someone is watching, so it affects their behaviour. In a fictional zombie show, the stakes are obviously much higher. Again, the losing contestants of Zombie Apocalypse do not get killed, hopefully. But there is much more pressure for characters to act as part of a community and solve interpersonal clashes compared to the reality show format that thrives on conflict and drama. The zombie discourse in Zombie Apocalypse complicates the social contracts of reality television, but also allows the boundaries of othering and marginalisation to be withdrawn through engagement with the fantastical force. Even within the artificial confines of reality television, self representation and visibility becomes more centralised. Horror, after all, promotes themes of power and identity, resetting what it is considered strength and where true power lies. Is it possible that the zombie format, survivor format, can be or already is employed to empower those traditionally marginalised by society? The zombie apocalypse effectively wipes the social slate clean. Those who are disenfranchised may find new purpose and respect in a world where traditional concepts of otherness are suddenly transformed. Instead of social differences, otherness becomes defined by monstrosity, as in the zombies, and moral behaviour. Do the values and the actions of the strangers match the group? And how much the individual can contribute to the community. The in group out group dynamic, therefore, becomes essential for survival, with divides based on the alignments of belief and time spent together rather than identity markers such as gender, race, disability, so on. However, these new bonds also mean that those outside the community are automatically treated with mistrust, even hatred. But again, that can be essential to survival, as we see in things like The Walking Dead. The show does, however, offer a glimpse into how artificial horror environments and a monstrous other can be employed to examine behaviour and social dynamics. Or, as Dave Verhagen succinctly puts it, whether in drama or reality television, it's the freaking zombie apocalypse, and even the best of these people are a mess. Thank you very much.